Hey guys, today I have an epic video for you because I have two epic guns. Here we have two Paterson Colts. These were the earliest of the Colts. Both are being sold on consignment here and both of them are worth a lot of money. Come a little closer and check these babies out. We got the Papa and the baby. Okay, here they are, very rare Paterson Colts. Now, did you know that Samuel Colt, when he started out, was a failure? That's right, the first company he started was the Paterson Colt Manufacturing Company. Paterson, New Jersey, by the way, not the name of a man, but Paterson, New Jersey is where they built these. They do say Paterson, New Jersey, right on the top of the barrel. This one is faded where you can't really read it, but I can make out the fact that it does say Paterson, New Jersey. These are two of the three models. I actually did a video, a lot more detail about the history of the Colt Paterson, how the company went out of business and what happened after that. For those who want more detail, I will show some clips for that, but for today, I just want to show you these two because these two are available. But the Paterson Colt came in three models. This one, I called it the Papa, but actually it's called the number 5 or the holster model. Then in the middle is a belt model, or I don't know what else to call it, the one in the middle. And we don't have one here now, but here is a brief segment of one that I showed in the previous video, which by the way was almost 4 years ago. So let's pick on the middle child. I'm a middle child, so we'll pick on the middle child. That happened to me all the time growing up. But this is the middle child. The loading rod was added later. So they began to use the loading rod in 39. So again, they made these in 1836. 39, they added the loading rod because without it, you had to take the wedge out, the cylinder out, reload it. So basically you take the gun apart, put it back together again. So you get 5 shots and you're done. And then this one, what I call the baby, they call the pocket pistol. But it sure looks like a baby to me. Now, again, there's a lot of detail. I'll show you a brief segment about the history, and we'll go where Colt came up with the idea and how it all fell apart. But there were 2,300 of these made, only 2,300 of the 3 variations, not 2,300 each, but 2,300 total. And then 500 more were put together by it was actually the chairman of the board, the man that put in the most money. Colt declared bankruptcy, and so Ehlers bought up all of the remaining parts and supplies, and they put together another 500. So I believe that makes about 2,800 made. This one, I believe, is an Ehlers model because it should have, all the parts should be numbered. And in fact, I only found one numbered part, and that's indicative of the Ehlers model because they were guns, the parts were laying around. They put them together after the company went bankrupt, and they sold them off just to try to recoup some of their money. And again, the man behind that was Ehlers. This one, the serial number, by the way, is 335. Fairly easy to take apart, but 335, even though that was a fairly early gun, it was put together later. And then also this, the original ones, well, here's a picture of the original one. You'll notice that these earlier ones had no rod, and that was one of the things the Army required. The basic story, it's a lot of detail, but the basic story is they were trying to get a military contract because that's where you're going to be successful. They're going to sell thousands of them. But the military didn't like the idea that I have to take it all apart in order to reload it, so they added the rod. This one may have come with the rod, maybe an original rod, because 1836 they made them without the rod, and then by 1839 they were making them with the rod, and then of course the Ehlers ones, they sent them all back to have the rod added. So this one with the rod added, you can see it is engraved, beautifully engraved, and it still has some original finish that's visible, although very faded. You can turn the cylinder by half cocking it, and there is a cylinder seam here. Also, when they put in the rod, they also made this cutout. So again, you could load it without taking it apart. And that was important, particularly in the military. They were used in the Mexican Wars and also the Indian Wars. And to be, it was able to carry 5 rounds, but you needed to cut this out, which was a modification, and add the rod, which was a modification. One of the features in this model is the the trigger, which pops down. Trigger pops up so that when you put it in and out, it doesn't get caught on your clothing. But the military said the trigger was too flimsy. When you cock it, you can see it pop down. This one you have to move a little bit, but it should pop down automatically. When I pull the trigger back, you should see the trigger pop down. There it goes, comes down. There, I just barely touched it. But it's a very flimsy trigger. So that part of it needed to be improved. The loading needed to be improved. So basically, the military said, you need to make some improvements. They were running out of money, and the company went bankrupt. Well, actually, this is a great place to throw in some Colt history from the previous video. Now, Samuel Colt, in reading the story of his life, and of course, after he became rich and famous, and by the way, I did look up that when he died, he was worth $15 million. That's significant because today that would be, hundreds of millions. But he died rich and famous. Even though he started out, he didn't have money. He didn't have the money to actually start the factory. He had to bring in investors. But he was also a very proud man. They describe him as being excessively litigious, which means he sued all his partners at one time or another, sued his board members. He sued a lot of people. And that really brings us to the story of this cylinder. He actually took a trip halfway around the world. From what I could tell, he went all the way to India, but he was working on a passenger ship. And he tells the story that he came up with the idea of the rotating cylinder by watching a paddle wheel on a riverboat. And it gave him this idea, and he actually defended that in court, told that story a number of times. And so it is recorded in history. If you read about where did he come up with this idea, he insists that he came up with it by watching the paddle wheel when he was on this ship. But I found another source. Turns out that it was a result of a lawsuit. There was actually another rotating cylinder. It was the Collier's flintlock. You can see a picture of the Collier's flintlock, and right away it really reminds me of the Paterson or even the Walker. You'll see in a minute when we look at the Walker, which is one of the last guns we'll look at, even the trigger guard looks about the same. In this case, it's a flintlock, and it was made in 1814. So a full 20 years before Samuel Colt came up with his invention. And you can see the rotating cylinder and a flintlock. Now, the downside to this particular invention, and this is in England, they made them in England, they were handmade, so technically it wasn't commercially manufactured. These were handmade guns. I don't know how many they made, but they're very, very rare. If I flip one picture back, you can see that there's drawings here, but they also made a rotating barrel flintlock rifle. So when I found this was news to me because, again, Colt gets credit for making the first revolving cylinder when, in fact, 20 years earlier, Collier made one as a flintlock. As I said, the downside to this, however, is the rotating cylinder is manually rotated. So you would shoot the flintlock, you would rotate the cylinder and shoot it again. For some reason, that design did not take off. Now, the problem is we need to connect Samuel Colt to seeing that design. And in fact, when he was on his trip around halfway around the world, he stopped in London, England, and it is documented the day he visited the London Tower, the Tower of London, I guess that is. He visited the museum at the Tower of London, and this gun was on display. And so we basically know he saw it. He said he got the idea from the paddle wheel, and we'll leave it to you to make up your own mind. But I find this incredibly similar to the Paterson design. And in fact, if you look at the trigger, this trigger guard, the cutout, and this trigger guard is very similar. And actually the bell, see the what they call a bell-bottom grip, and here's the Paterson, the first design, did not have a loading rod. We'll talk about that. Later they added the loading rod, but that's the first design with the bell grip and the bell grip. So I find it a little hard to believe that if he saw that didn't influence his thinking. But again, he wanted to make sure he got credit for the patent. So speaking of credit, it was actually the Texans that deserve the credit. Captain Samuel Walker bought about 1,000 of the Patersons, and he absolutely loved them and couldn't understand why the Army didn't order them. So he said, I will invest in the company and make more Colts. And this became the Walker Colt that was made in Hartford, Connecticut, and obviously was very successful. So 2 very rare early Colts. Again, I am not an expert. You already figured that out. If you're watching this and you're on the Colt forums, I'm sure you're going to want to show these to other collectors. Not something I collect since I collect German pistols, but the history of these Colts is just remarkable, and it really was the gun that won the West. Obviously, this model became the Colt Walker, and then became the Single Action Army, which is really the precursor for all of our Colt revolvers that we still use today. Well, I hope you learned something today, because there's a lot of information, a lot of things that I didn't know about these early Colts. Bear in mind, we do have them on consignment. They're on our website if you want to check them out. You can view them by checking the link below.